The Mark O. Hatfield School of Government at Portland State University, created in 2000, is named in honor of Senator Hatfield and his exceptional public service career. As part of its 2010 Hatfield Leadership Legacy Summer Institute, the School of Government is showcasing the issues, policies, values, and personal characteristics that frame the leadership legacy of Senator Hatfield. By capturing recollections of former staff members, the school seeks to highlight the unique values exemplified by the senator in his 46 years of public service. In this program, J. Keith Kennedy, Mark Vandewater, and Lon Fendall share their stories.
One of the reasons why I was attracted to and wound up working for Mark Hatfield was because of his position on the war. I mean, when he first ran for the Senate in 1966, he was already speaking out against the war in Vietnam. He had offered the resolution in the National Governors Association meeting, and his opponent at the time, Congressman Robert Duncan, was known to say, you know, if we don't stop them in the rice paddies of Vietnam, we'll be fighting them in the ryegrass of the Willamette Valley.
Even high school and college years, he was definitely my hero. He had come to our college in Newburgh a number of times. He was on the board. One time in particular, I was on a panel of students asking him questions, and there was sort of an idea implanted. If I could work for that man, I would do anything. I would drop anything to do that.
I formally began my time with Senator Hatfield in 1990 and worked with him until near the very end of his term in 96. He was in the position, of course, to deliver on a lot of his ideas and the ideas of the people in Oregon. In Oregon's history, being a very progressive state and a progressive citizenry, a very engaged citizenry, from the time when he was in the state legislature and championed the causes of equality in hotel accommodations, something that was far, far ahead of its time.
Senator Hatfield's wartime experience, including a visit to Hiroshima only a month after the bomb was dropped, and later to Haiphong, Vietnam, informed his values, especially reverence for life, and a profound commitment to peace and human rights in many situations across the globe. He opposed the Vietnam and Gulf Wars, but this opposition rested on deeply held convictions about justice and equality.
When I hear the phrase, the conscience of the Senate, it seems to me that it connects with what I call his principled core, that there were the times when he was willing to be the only vote against something. His ethic was always focused on the needs of the poor. And he, for example, would have been very similar to Wilberforce, the one who worked in the Parliament to end the slave trade and end slavery in the British Empire. When his government and when his party and when his supporters said, let's go to war, let's be strong against our enemy, he was willing to say, what is strength anyway? Does it only come from military?
He was very active in supporting refugee assistance programs overseas. Early on in my tenure with him, he was a leading voice in trying to deal with world hunger issues and tried to do what he could in the appropriations process through the PL 480 program and the Ag Appropriations Bill and in various programs under the Foreign Assistance Appropriations Bill to address those problems. At home, he was always very interested in nutrition programs.
Hatfield fought to protect Indian treaty rights on tribal lands. In his legacy of environmental stewardship, he quadrupled Oregon's wilderness area to more than 2 million acres, and in his last term as senator, wielded his strength in the Appropriations Committee to preserve the Opal Creek wilderness.
The story of Opal Creek goes to the last bill that Senator Hatfield managed when he was chairman of the Appropriations Committee in 1996. The Opal Creek provision was not really one of the contentious issues, but it was a, quote, legislative provision. And at one point in this discussion, Speaker Gingrich said, well, these legislative provisions shouldn't be in appropriations bills anyway. Let's just get rid of all of them. And Senator Hatfield, who was hadn't said much up to that point in this discussion, suddenly kind of vaulted forward in his chair and said, "But not Opal Creek." He did say this rather forcefully, and it kind of took everybody by surprise. And there was a moment of silence, and then the speaker said, "Well, okay, you're the chairman. You can get yours."
Hatfield believed that appropriations work by the Senate was at the center of governance and policy work, and that one of the major roles of elected officials is to determine how tax dollars are spent. This process requires respecting the needs of fellow senators in meeting the expectations of their constituents.
There's lots of talk now about the evils of earmarking and how it's terrible. But that is in essence how this process works, that people have these ideas, these innovations at the very, very grassroots level. And the luxury, of course, was that having someone like Senator Hatfield being able to implement them. When Mark Hatfield was chairman of the Appropriations Committee, everyone with an idea and everyone with an initiative and everyone who wanted to do something and had conviction and had a strong argument for it made their case, and the committee decided. One vote, one person, one vote. And that's less of the case now. I think in the future people will look increasingly wistfully at the time when Mark Hatfield was in the Senate and the Congress, and wish back for those days. This United States Senate and his beloved Appropriations Committee has become much more acrimonious, much more partisan, a much more difficult place in which to work.
Hatfield was strongly committed to local control and local problem solving. This was reflected in his design of the Columbia River Gorge Commission and his long-standing protection of BPA from centralized government control, and in his neighborhood initiative.
The neighborhood government idea was sort of a power to the people idea, radical in a way, and yet very simple in that he would say, we do things at the local level already that are profound and important. We build schools, we manage schools, we build streets, we run city governments. He wanted to take that a step further and say, why not give them the resources and empower them to do more effectively the full range of human services?
He also saw Oregon as a place to try things and then to export those things that were successful to other states. And it became a model for lots of different things. And it wasn't just in kind of urban areas and city planning, but lots of different things in rural areas and in the education areas and research. Certainly his contribution and his assistance in helping people at OHSU and the VA hospital. This is in some of the cutting-edge stuff that's being done there and through the Oregon University system.
A hallmark of Hatfield's public service career was his shrewd exercise of bipartisanship, his cordial relationships with those with whom he disagreed, and his personal care for individuals.
When Senator Hatfield got elected to the Senate in 1966, and one of the lions of the Senate at the time was John Stennis from Mississippi, a classic Southern Democrat, and in many ways very different from Mark Hatfield in terms of politics, in terms of public policy positions. But one way in which they were very similar is that they were both, consummate gentlemen and very respectful of other people and other people's views. Senator Stennis was mugged outside his home in Washington and shot and severely wounded. When he heard this news, went to the hospital and sat there in the hospital all night long and took calls and spoke to Senator Stennis's family and just sort of handled things there. He was a wonderful guy to work for because he was so kind to all of us.
Well, he's a man of great faith. His life experiences, whether it be Haiphong or whether it be Hiroshima or the Iwo Jima, this World War II experience, very much provided him with early life lessons about the fragility of people and the vulnerability of people.
One of the things that I think all of us admired about Senator Hatfield was the way he treated the everyday folks that work in the Senate, you know, the people in the cafeteria, the elevator operators. I think of his contributions in terms of personal qualities, of his commitment to public service, not to politics, but to public service, that being in political office was to be there to try to do good things for the people you represent, and for the nation as a whole, and for the world at large. Treating people with decency and respect, regardless of the position they held.
Senator Hatfield was once quoted as saying, "I pray for the integrity, justice, and courage to vote the correct vote, not the political vote." This is how he governed and how he lived his life.
Finding the good in a person is the side of being a conscience that makes you a human being.